Hi, my name is Kerry Critchlow from RCI Recording Studios, and today we are going to be talking about musical modes. Now, this is really where things start to get a little bit more complicated. We're adding more complexity, and modes are going to allow you to create even more emotional feelings with your music once you understand how to use them. Now, today we're really just going to be introducing the basic concepts of modes, and then we'll get into like the nitty-gritty detail of the specific modes and how they can be used in future videos. But today we're really just want to introduce the concept and get a few basic sort of ideas down before we really jump into the weeds and go over how they can really be used. But we'll go over kind of some of the basics today. So first, there are 7 modes. There are 7 notes in a diatonic scale, and there are 7 modes with those scales. So the first scale is Ionian. The second scale is Dorian. The third is Phrygian. The fourth is Lydian. The fifth is Mixolydian. The seventh is Aeolian. And the seventh is Locrian. Now, I've put together this little spreadsheet here. Feel free to copy it down. This may come in handy in the future. But we have the chord names. So, the 1 major 7. And actually, if we bring up our major scale sheet here, you can kind of see this in play here. So we have the major 7, the minor 7, the minor 7, the major 7, the dominant 7, the minor 7, the half diminished, and the major. Well, same thing here, right? We have the major 7, the minor 7, the minor 7, third minor 7, 4 major 7, 5 dominant 7, 6 minor 7, and then minor 7 flat 5, which is that half diminished. So you can half diminished. You can just think of as a flat 5 flat 7, or minor 3 flat 5. And so these would be the chords, right? We also have the formulas for them. And Ionian is basically the same thing. I mean, not basically, it is the same thing as a major scale. So if we go and look at our major scale, we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that will give us our notes in whatever key we're looking at. In this case, we're just looking at C. We're going to stick to C today just to keep things a little bit more simple. But modes can get a little bit complicated, as you'll see in a little bit. But so we have these, our whole scale formula and our scale mode here. Ionian, major scale is Ionian. So if you're playing a major scale, you're playing an Ionian scale. It's that simple. It is the first mode, and it is the major scale. Our second scale is Dorian, and it's the minor 2, and it's kind of the same as a whole scale formula. You're just kind of shifting where you're starting on with the formula. So instead of whole, whole, half, in this case, we're starting with this second W here, and we're going whole, half, whole, 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 half, and then whole. So whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. And then for Phrygian, we're actually starting on this third step in this whole scale formula, or in this scale formula, the H, right? So instead of whole, whole, half, we're actually starting with half, whole, whole, whole. So Phrygian is half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, and so on and so forth, right? So we're just kind of, with these modes, we're just really taking this major, the major scale formula, and we're just starting it on a different value, whether it's the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, but I've written them all down here for you so that you can have easy access to them. And each of, and because you're starting on a different degree of this major scale formula, or major scale, it's going to give you a different sound, right? And we're going to go through some basic examples of this here in a little bit, but you can think of it as there are 7 notes in a scale, right? in our major scale, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. In the key of C, that would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B. No sharps, no flats. In Dorian, we're actually going to be, it's kind of similar. You're just taking a major scale and then you're making some slight changes to it because we're starting on a different value of the formula. So in this case, the scale degree for Dorian would be a 1, a 2, a flat 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, and a flat 7. And in C modal, this would be C Dorian. That would be C, D, E flat, F, G, A, and B flat. And in C major, because we're keeping in the same key, this would be D Dorian, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And I guess it wouldn't hurt to maybe go over some examples as we are doing this. So we're going to go ahead up and bring up a piano real quick. And we're going to use this to sort of kind of just give you some examples of what this is doing, because sometimes it helps to hear the example. So we'll bring up a piano here. And we'll start with C major scale. And we come back to the 1 or the 8, depending on how you're thinking. The 8 would be the octave, but C to C, right? No sharps, no flats, just C. So we have our whole, so 1 whole step, 2 whole steps. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and then a half step up to C again. Okay, so we have a C major scale. Now, what if we were to take that C major scale and make some subtle changes to it to put it into a different mode? So in this case, we're going to look at C Dorian. And in order to make the C major scale into a C Dorian scale, we're going to flat our 3rd and our 7th notes. So in this case, it would be the E and the B that we're going to make flat. So we'll take our E and make that flat. We'll take our B and make that flat. So now we're going to play the 2 scales again with each other. Speed it up just a hair. So this first scale is going to be C Ionian, or just a regular C major scale. And the second scale is a C Dorian. As you can see, they're very different from each other because we've had this flat 3 and flat 7, or well, I guess over here, flat 3 and flat 7. We're taking our E and making it an E flat. We're taking our B and making it a B flat. And that is putting this into a C Dorian mode. And you can see kind of how it's a little bit different than our C major scale, right? It has a different sort of sound. And that is... we're going to start with modal, and then we can get into major, because there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of sort of explain how modes work. And I'm going to do my best to try and cover all the bases so that, you know, it hopefully becomes a little bit easier to understand. But you can think of it as if you take if you apply this formula in the key of C major. So like right now with 2 flats, this is actually in the key of B flat, if I'm not mistaken. If I look at the circle of fifths, 2 flats is B flat, yeah. And so C Dorian is actually also in the key of B flat, and it is the second second degree of the scale that you're starting on. So in the key of B flat, you would start with a B flat, then it would be B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, and then A, and then back to B flat. Well, C is the second note in our B flat scale, and we're starting on this that second note. Well, in the key of C, D is our second note, and in Dorian we'd be starting on D, and we'd play all the notes in the key of C, starting on D. So you can think of that as the second degree. Okay, so here we have a C major scale, and so that would be our Ionian, and then we have D Dorian. And if we look at our formula here, we have whole, half, whole, 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 half, and then whole. Well, we have whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. And so in the key of C, you have D Dorian. And that's just using all the notes. So when you're switching modes, you're actually kind of switching keys as well. And this is where some of that complexity gets into. But just understanding that if you take your C major scale or whatever key you happen to be in this case we're in C, and you start on the second note of that scale and go D to D, you're in Dorian. Conversely, if you go E to E, you're in Phrygian. F to F is in Lydian. G to G is Mixolydian. A to A is Aeolian, and B to B is Locrian. And so we're starting on the first degree, the second degree, the third degree, the fourth degree, the fifth degree, the sixth degree, and the seventh degree. And so we have C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, and B Locrian. Those are all in the key of C major, but they're all going to have kind of different flavors, just like with this. But this is where the modal values are. We're always starting on C, but because we're changing the C major scale to fit with these different modes, we're going to be actually putting ourselves in different keys in order to keep the relationships with these formulas and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is making it more confusing or less confusing, but you can think of it as if you're in the key of C major, the C major scale is your Dorian. The C major scale, but starting on D and going to D, would be Dorian. The C major scale, but starting on E and going up to E. So if we were to... This would be our Phrygian. So we're going from E to E, but we're using all the notes in a C major scale. So this would be E Phrygian. Okay. And the reason it's E Phrygian is because if we took let's say we had this in E major, so this would be an E major scale, so E Ionian. Well, E Phrygian is taking the note. If we go to E Phrygian, we are adding a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So if we were to take our E major scale and we were to flat 2, flat 3, keep our 4, keep our 5, a flat 6, and a flat 7, and then we're back at E. This is E Phrygian, and it also puts it into the key of C. So hopefully this is making some sense here, right? So this is an E major scale. This is an E Phrygian scale. And the way that we can determine this E Phrygian is by giving the E major scale a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. You can hear the difference, right? Then we have our Lydian mode, and that's essentially just giving it a sharp 4. And in C modal, in C Lydian, that would be an F sharp. So in order to make a C Lydian scale, we would start on C, and then everything would be the same except for that sharp 4th, which would be an F sharp. If we were to play that out. And it's got a little bit of a happier sound to it, right? So C Lydian would be adding this F sharp or a sharp 4. Same thing would go with in the key of C major, you have F Lydian. And you would start the C major scale on F and play it out to F, and that would give you the same kind of sound as this C Lydian. So if we were to start on F and just play out all the notes in a C major scale until we arrive back at F. And so that would be the mode of Lydian with that sharp 4. We'll go back to C major here. And then we have Mixolydian, which just has a flat 7. In the C modal, that'd be a B flat. And so we would take our B and make it a flat. And then this would be a C Mixolydian scale. Okay, and that would be the same thing as playing a G in the key of C major, a G to a G. So no sharps or flats, starting on the note G and playing all the notes up to G again. Hopefully this is making sense, and I'm just kind of giving you some of these examples here so that you can hear what the differences are between the modes, but also understanding that it gets a little complicated, but you can think of the modes as in any given key that you're starting on a different degree of the scale. So a Dorian is starting on the 2nd degree, the Phrygian is starting on the 3rd degree, Lydian is starting on the 4th degree, Mixolydian is starting on the 5th degree, Aeolian is starting on the 6th degree. Now, Aeolian is actually the exact same thing as our natural minor scale. So if we were to look at our natural minor formula, we have a whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. And in Aeolian, we have whole, half, whole, half, whole, whole. This is our natural minor scale. So Aeolian and the natural minor are exactly the same thing. If we looked at our natural minor kind of thing here that we have going on, we're starting on A. We're in the key of A minor. We're starting on A, and we're going to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. No flats, no sharps. So A minor and C are relative to each other. They're related. They have the same notes in them. And this is a circle of fifths, by the way. I might do a video kind of explaining a little bit how the circle of fifths works. But this outer ring, for right now, just this outer ring is all the major scales, and the inner ring is the minor scales, and they're in relative kind of order right now. So C and A minor are the same. G and E minor are relative. D and B minor are relative. A and F sharp are relative. F sharp minor are relative. So you can kind of get the relationships between the various major and minor keys with the circle of fifths pretty easily at a glance here, right? F and D minor are relative. Meaning, when I say relative, they share all the same notes within the key. So C and A minor have all the same notes. There are no flats, no sharps. G major, and E minor are only have one sharp, and that would be the F sharp. So hopefully this is making sense. But anyways, so you can think of the Aeolian mode as an A minor mode, and we've kind of gone over the A minor in the past. But if we were to take our C major scale and make it minor, we would do that by flatting the 3, the 6, and the 7. And so we have a flat 3, a flat 6, and then the 7 was already flat from the Mixolydian. So this is a C minor, or a C natural minor scale, or a C Aeolian scale. Okay, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7, or C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, or in the key of A, it'd be an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, with no sharps or flats, and we can draw that out as well. Okay, and then we can do the same thing with this Aeolian. It's if you were to make this a major scale, you would just sharp, or you would unflat the 3, unflat the 6, and unflat the 7, and now this is an A major scale. Or to put it in Aeolian or A natural minor, you flat the 3, the 6, and the 7. This also puts it into the key of A minor as well. So I'm showing you two different ways of kind of thinking about these modes, and hopefully this is making sense to you, right? You can either think of it as starting on whichever degree of the scale you're in, or you can think of it as making a change to the major scale you're currently using. So if you're using the C major scale, making something Aeolian would be using a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So you would make the E a flat, the A a flat, and the B a flat in order to make it Aeolian. Or you can think of it as starting on the 6th degree of whatever scale you're in. So in key of C, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A is the 6th degree. You start your scale on A and play A to A using the notes of C major. And then you can also use these scale formulas to get these same results, right? Starting with whatever note you wanted to. You can start E flat and apply a Phrygian scale to E flat, and it would give you a E flat Phrygian, or or C Phrygian, or E Phrygian if you start on E, right? So hopefully this is making sense. So this column here, this is the modal, or the modes of C, or C modal. So we have C Ionian, C Dorian, C Phrygian, C Lydian, C Mixolydian, C Aeolian, and C Locrian. In this column, we have the C major scale, but we're keeping it relative to the key of C major. And so we have a C Ionian, a D Dorian, an E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, and B Locrian. And we're just starting on the different degrees of the scale, right? Whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. So Locrian, of course, then would be starting on the 7th degree of your scale, or the B. And you can even think of it here, if we have our Ionian whole scale formula, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're starting on the 7th degree of this formula, major scale formula. So we would start with the H whole whole, or half whole whole, half whole whole whole, right? Half whole whole, half whole whole whole. And hopefully this is making sense, right? And so there's several different ways that you can think of, that you can kind of get to what you're looking at here. You can either take the scale formula and start on whichever degree of this scale formula you want. And I've just written it down here so that you can copy it or use it without having to think too hard about it. But essentially, if you want a Dorian, you're starting on the 2nd degree of our whole scale formula. And so a Dorian would be whole, half, whole, 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 half, and then back to whole, right? And as we see, we have whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. Same thing with Phrygian. If you wanted to derive the Phrygian scale, you could start on the 3rd degree of our Ionian or major scale, which would be the half, and half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. Well, Phrygian is half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. So that's the 3rd degree. Lydian is the 4th degree. Mixolydian is the 5th degree. Aeolian is the 6th. Locrian is the 7th. You can also think of it in scale degrees. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no sharps, no flats. That is our major scale. For Dorian, we're adding a flat 3 and a flat 7 to our major scale. So we're just changing our major scale to add a flat 3 and a flat 7. Or for Phrygian, we're taking our major scale and we're changing it to make it a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. For our Lydian, we're taking our major scale and we're adding a sharp 4. Or you can think of it and so on and so forth, right? Mixolydian, a flat 7, Aeolian, a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7, and Locrian, a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 5, a flat 6, a flat 7. You can use the modal values, so like C Ionian, C Dorian, C Phrygian, and we're just applying these scales to C, right? So if we have a C major scale here, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, if we flat R3 and flat R7, that gives us a E flat and a B flat. If we flat R2, R3, R6, and R7, that gives us a D flat, an E flat, an A flat, and a B flat. If we're sharpening R4 with Lydian, we're just making our F, our 1, 2, 3, 4, a sharp F, so it's an F sharp to get C Lydian. Mixolydian, we're just adding a flat 7, so it's the C major scale, but we add a B flat, which is the 7th note of our C major scale, right? So hopefully this is making sense. Or you can pick whatever key you happen to want to play it in, C major, A major, E major, whatever have you. In this case, C major, and you just start your scale on the 2nd degree of that scale. So in this case, in C major, Ionian, you would start on C and end on C. For D Dorian, you would start on D and end on D using all the notes of the C major scale. No sharps, no flats. And that would be giving you, if this key was in D major, you would be using a flat 3, which is an F. In the key of D, you have an F sharp and a C sharp. Well, in the key of D Dorian, you flat the 3 and you flat the 7, so you take away the F sharp, and that becomes an F natural, and you take away the C sharp, and that becomes a C, and now you have D Dorian. Hopefully this is making sense. We've played through, I think, all of the scales. Maybe not Locrian, so we'll just do a quick Locrian. So we'll take our C major scale, right? And in Locrian, you have a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 5, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So the only 2 notes that we're not changing are the 1 and the 4. So we're going to flat our 2, flat our 3. 4 is going to stay. We're going to flat our 5, flat our 6, flat our 7. And this is going to give us a Locrian scale. Okay, so hopefully this is all making sense. This is what modes are, is just scales, right? Now we'll get into how you can kind of apply these scales and how you can come up with like various chord arrangements and make it feel like you were using these sort of things. Maybe a simple example here would be to this is the key of G, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B. But if we were to think of this as a C major scale, right? We have a C major, a D minor, an E minor, and then instead of an F major, this would be an F sharp major, and then a G major, an A minor, and then a B diminished. If we were kind of keeping this sort of in the key of C, but using the C leading. So you can think of this almost as a C major. Here's our Lydian, our 4. So this is a C major scale, but instead of having this F natural, we're making it an F sharp major. So C major, D minor, E minor, F sharp major, then a G. So everything else is going to stay the same. So if we were to play these chords out, the 4th degree, this Lydian might sound a little odd, but this is a C major scale, but we're substituting out our F major for an F sharp major. Oh, sorry, don't know what happened there. And so you can, if you want to give C Lydian kind of a feel, you can do going from a C major to an F sharp major is going to give you a Lydian feel, right? Because we have this sharp, F sharp going on that we're adding into our C major scale. To make it a C Lydian. Now, technically, this is the key of G. There would only be 1 sharp, and F sharp major is not in the key of G or the key of C. But you can use this F sharp major in this C Lydian to give it that kind of Lydian feel. Let's see. So we'll do a C Lydian scale over this. So this may sound a little odd, but okay. And so we're kind of combining C and F sharp in a kind of a weird way that kind of gives you this sort of interesting sort of vibe emotionally, right? It feels a little bit more like whimsical, magical, like floaty. I don't know how to explain it. Lydian tends to be kind of a happier thing. So if you look at these modes, you'll notice that there are 3 major modes, which are Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. And then there's 4 minor modes, which are Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Locrian. And a minor mode is really just the flat 3 is going to delineate whether it's a minor or a major. So a major third would be a major sounding scale. A flat 3 would be a minor sounding scale. So anything that has a flat 3 in it, we can kind of just consider it to be a minor vibe, right? A minor scale vibe. So a Dorian is a minor scale. Phrygian is a minor type of scale. Not to be confused with like harmonic and melodic and natural or whatever, but like you can think of it as sort of flavors of minor scales, right? So Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Locrian are all going to have minor scale type of vibes, right? They're different than the minor scales we've gone over. Our natural, well, Aeolian is the natural minor, but we're not talking about a harmonic or melodic minor in this case. We're just talking about a Dorian, a Phrygian, Aeolian, or Locrian. These are all going to have minor scale vibes to them, right? Because of that flat 3. Whereas Lydian, Mixolydian, and Ionian have major scale feelings. So if you wanted to have a happier sort of vibe, you want to stick with maybe Ionian, Lydian, or Mixolydian. If you wanted a sadder sort of vibe, you want Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, or Locrian. And so you can kind of think of it in those terms as well, happy or sad. And, you know, kind of everywhere in between, right? Like, if we think about like our scale of negative emotions on the left and positive emotions on the right, major scales are going to lean towards positive emotions. Minor scales are going to lean towards minor or negative emotions. Not that they're good or bad per se, just that negative emotions might be sadness, depression, melancholy, that kind of thing, whereas positive emotions might be happiness, joy, magical, joyous, like that kind of thing, right? And so you kind of sort of think in those terms to a degree, depending on which scale or which vibe. Now we're going to get into more practical examples of how you can apply these in future videos, but for now I just want to make sure that you kind of have an understanding of what these scales are, how you can figure them out, or what notes kind of belong in them, and the different ways to sort of think about them, right? So like in summary, I guess we have either the scale formula that you can use and plug into whatever starting note you want, and that will give you the mode of whatever note that is. So if you're starting on F and you want to make it Locrian, if you start with an F and then go half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, that will give you an F Locrian if you plug in these values. Or you can take an F major scale and you can flat the 2, flat the 3, flat the 4, or sorry, flat the 2, flat the 3, flat the 5, flat the 6, flat the 7, and that will give you an F Locrian scale. And that's how we used this formula, the scale formula or the scale degrees, in order to figure out what these modal or major, these different types of things here, right? And the difference between modal and whatever key you happen to be in. So, like, if you're in the key of C major, here's your Ionian. You have D Dorian, which is taking a D major scale and flatting the 3 and flatting the 7, but that puts it into the key of C major. If you took, or you can have your modal way of doing it, which is you take whatever key you're in this case C, you flat the 3 from the major, so your E becomes an E flat, and you flat the 7, your B becomes a B flat, and this makes it Dorian. So however way you want to think of it, you can sort of kind of arrive there, right? And hopefully you understand what the different, at least a little bit, what the different modes kind of sound like. The fact that Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian are going to have more happier vibes. The fact that Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Locrian are going to have kind of sadder sort of vibes because of the minor thirds or the major thirds, whichever may be the case. And so, like I said, we're going to get more into how you can use these modes in future videos, but hopefully you have an understanding of how you can figure out the notes that belong in whatever mode you're wanting to use, whether it's Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. I did not come up with these mode names. These are just what they are. It can take some time, I guess, to memorize them. Although there's I can't remember what the actual thing is called, but you can take the first letter in each of these and make a kind of like make an acronym out of it, or well, not an acronym, but like make a statement out of it. So like, what was it? I don't play loud music after lunch is one way of doing it. So I for Ionian, don't for Dorian, play for Phrygian, loud for Lydian, music for Mixolydian, after for A, and lunch for Locrian, right? So we can maybe write that down real quick. Right. Oop. Let's unwrap that, shall we? Okay, we'll do it this way. I for Ionian, D for Dorian, play for Phrygian, loud for Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. I don't play loud music after lunch. Or you can say, I definitely play loud music after lunch, whichever applies to you. But hopefully this little kind of acronym or whatever, I can't remember the exact word for what this is called, but this will help you sort of memorize these mode names. And then they're based off of the degrees. So Ionian is based off of the 1. Dorian is based off the 2. Phrygian is based off the 3. Lydian is based off the 4. Mixolydian is based off the 5. Aeolian is based off the 6. And Locrian is based off the 7, right? And so hopefully this is all kind of making a little bit of sense. We're going to dive deeper into each of the modes and how they can be applied, and how you can kind of use modes to create the emotional sort of vibe you want. But for now, we'll leave it at that. You have the scales, the formulas, the names, the degrees, and how they can sort of be roughly applied. And we've gone over a few examples of how you can sort of use some of the concepts, and you've heard the scales and how they kind of have different vibes, and how you can take whatever key you're in and change them based on your scale degrees, or keep in a key and just switch to the different degrees, right? So, like for instance, Lydian is in the key of G, and we start on the 4th degree of G. Well, G, A, B, C would be the 4th degree of G. So we start on C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and that's our Lydian. So C Lydian is actually the 4th degree of the key of G, right? F Lydian is the 4th degree of the key of C. I don't know if this is confusing you more or helping, but you can kind of think of it in those terms if you want, right? You can either think of it as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th degree of whatever. You can take the scale kind of formula here and just kind of memorize what the different ones are. You know, Lydian sharp 4, right? So if you're in the key of C, you can just take the 4th and sharp it, or you can figure out that the 4th C Lydian is the 4th degree in the key of G, whichever is easiest for you. But these are different ways to sort of think about it and arrive to the kind of concept of how these modes come together and how they are put together with these different formulas and thoughts. And we'll get into how you can use these into more detail in future videos. But hopefully you kind of have the basic understanding of them, kind of a general idea of what they sound like. I encourage you to sort of, you know, take these scales and play with them and see how they are different. So like take the key of C, for instance, and apply these different scale degrees, you know, like for Dorian, flat to 3, flat to 7, and you can play out these scales and see what the different sort of vibes are that you get when you play these scales compared to one another. And I think you'll find that Ionian tends to be a little happier, Lydian tends to be a little happier, Mixolydian tends to be a little happier, whereas Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Locrian tend to be a little sadder. But they're all different flavors, and they're going to open up more emotional possibilities with your songwriting as you kind of start to understand these modes and how to use them, which we'll go over in the future. And also how these modes kind of relate to both your major scales and your natural minor scale, being the 1st and 6th degree, right? So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Next week, before we go too much further into the weeds with some of this stuff, we may actually do a little bit of a deep dive on the circle of fifths so that you kind of understand how that all works and relates. But we will, in the future, at some point, for sure, dive deeper into each of these modes and how you can use them to create different feelings and emotions when you're writing your music so that you can come up with the right sort of vibes for what you want to kind of try to achieve, right? So if you're trying to write a sort of a melancholy song, but that's not too dark and depressing, which flavor of these might be the best one? Or if you're trying to write a happy song, but not something that's too bright and too kind of cartoony or whatever, which one you can use, right? Or like whatever feeling you want to express, you can start to understand how to use these different modes in order to sort of help achieve you to do that. Also, with that in mind, it might behoove me to say that this is for major modes. There are also minor modes for both the melodic minor and the harmonic minor. So music theory can get pretty complex. And again, these are just places to start, right? Knowing this stuff is not necessarily going to allow you to write better music, but knowing it can kind of help you to understand, you know, what you've already done, how to communicate it to others, or to give you just a basic starting point for you to kind of mess around with and play with to get where we want. So with that, we'll leave it. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.